Okay, welcome back. Now I'll teach you all how to answer question C. So it is important that we take note of every single word in the question itself. So for question C, it tells us to study source C. And then, is the author a supporter or opponent? So you have to give a stand you have to give the author's stand on the anti-choke movement. And lastly, you need to explain your answer. By explaining, we are talking about giving reason. Why do you say the author is a supporter or an opponent? Okay, so I will just annotate the key points over here. Supporter or opponent, give the author's stand. Okay, and the anti-choke movement is the question focus. Now we move on to study source C. So when you look at a source, always remember to start from the provenance. In this case, it is adapted from an online comment. The moment you see online comment, think about the audience. Who will the audience be? Okay, so likely netizens. And in this case, they didn't mention where the source was posted, so we can assume that it is taken from Singapore, and so Singaporeans will be reading the comments. Then it is regarding the anti-choke movement and posted on June 4th, 2019. So this date is also when the debate on the movement is ongoing. So now you have some background ideas, not some context on when and where the source is posted. Okay, then we begin to read the source. We have to do so line by line, word by word. So do not make it an issue. Over here, this statement, do not make it an issue. It sounds like the author is trying to give us some advice as to how we should think or feel about the situation. How we should think or feel about the situation, about the movement itself. Okay. Okay, I will put here situation first because take note, in this sentence, do not make it an issue. There's a it over here. So in your mind, you have to ask yourself, what does it refers to? The sentence itself does not explain, so we read on. Okay, spare a thought for the elderly. So when asking someone to spare a thought, it's asking a person to think for others. Think for others. And when you are thinking for others, you are not being selfish. So in other words, he's saying do not be selfish. Okay, and when we are not being selfish, we are being instead be kind or gracious. Okay, so the next line, we do not want them to wander around trying to get a seat while carrying their heavy food. So this sentence here, do not want them to wander around while carrying heavy food. It actually tells us because we do not want this thing to happen. So the author is trying to tell us the outcome that we do not want to see, which is the elderly wandering around. Wandering around means what? They are moving without purpose, right? So they are wasting time, wasting energy, carrying heavy food. Okay, heavy food. Why did he specifically mention the food is heavy? He's trying to hint to us that heavy food, it is not easy for the elderly. Okay, so he said we do not want them to wander around because it is not easy for the elderly to do so. And then the next line, even if it's not about the elderly, so who else is he talking about? Do we really want people walking around the hawker center with trays of hot food trying to get a seat? So this is the second reason he's giving. Second reason. So do we really want them to walk around with hot food? Applying to other users of the hawker. Okay, why does he want to talk about hot food this time round? Okay, the answer is in the next line, which say that it will cause safety issue. So, carrying hot food wandering around can be a safety issue because it may spill on the people. And when hot food spill on others, it burns them, especially children or even on other elderlies itself. So he say here is a safety issue. So far, based on all these statements you have read, are you able to guess what does the term here it refers to? Okay. So it okay. It refers, make a guess, refers to the 1. Choke practice, or 2. Anti-choke movement. Which one do you think it is? Okay, let us read the last sentence to find out. Okay, so the next sentence. Also, why are we even equating anti-choking to kindness? Normally when you see the word also, it refers to adding on. Okay, so over here he gives you the first big idea on why chopping has its value, because it actually allow the elderly to sit down earlier and not waste their time and effort. And the second value is that chopping will minimize danger, will prevent accidents from happening. So over here he's making his third point. His third point is that why are we even equating anti-chopping to kindness? So what he's trying to do here is to question the reason behind the anti-chopping movement. Okay, based on your background information, what you have just read over here, the anti-chopping movement is about promoting kindness, removing an ungracious act that he finds that chopping itself is ungracious because it's selfish and things like that. So he's questioning the reason behind anti-chopping. He's saying that the whole issue is not even about being kind. You see, recall his first line, do not make it an issue. To him, to the author, okay, to the author, chopping a seed has nothing to do with kindness. In other words, when he say that the whole action has nothing to do with kindness. The reason behind an anti-choke movement, which is talking about promoting kindness, becomes invalid. So therefore, the reason behind an anti-choke movement is now invalid. So this is the writer's argument. And the last line, coming early to chope your seat is not unkind. So the last line, he further reinforced, he further strengthened the whole idea that the issue itself is not about being kind or unkind. So coming early to chope your seat. Okay, what do you think he's trying to suggest by saying coming early? Okay, so the author, this over here is an inference, I'm making a guess. So the author probably trying to say that the people who comes early deserve to sit earlier, and therefore he can chope a place. This is your own guess. Okay, so we have already analyzed the source. We see that the author's main argument is that the reason behind anti-chopping movement itself is invalid because the whole idea is not about promoting kindness or being more gracious. So we go back to the question. Is the author a supporter or opponent of the anti-choke movement? Based on just now whatever you have read and you conclude, okay, probably you can conclude that. So these are thoughts in your mind. You don't have to write it down in your answers. So from the source, you conclude that the author is not a supporter. Or you can also use, you conclude that the author is an opponent of the anti-choke movement. So you got his stand. Now, the key idea here is to explain how you come to get this stand. And there are different ways to do so. The first way is that you can always talk about what the source say. So in this case, you will look at the source and then you will say what is the message of the source, what is the author telling you. So we can always study the message. Now, but sometimes for this kind of question, studying the message is not enough because the message can be a neutral stand, or in this case, clearly you can tell the message is not neutral. But what if the author is just trying to share a different perspective? For example, I can complain about the government making bad decisions, but that does not mean I do not support the government, because I can just be making some statement based on what I hear, based on the things I see around me, and so on and so forth. So another way you can answer this kind of question is to talk about the tone. Tone meaning his voice. How does it sound like? Does the writer sound sarcastic? Or is he being critical? Critical meaning he's trying to find fault, trying to complain. Okay, and one more way you can answer this kind of question, is to actually look at the author's intention. So study the author's intention. What do I mean by study the author's intention? You have to ask yourself, does the author think that the anti-trope movement for this particular case is justified? Okay, link it back to the issue statement. The issue statement is the anti-trope movement justified or not? So, does the author think that the movement is justified? If yes, okay, probably he is a supporter, or if no, probably he is an opponent. Okay, so when you look at this, you ask yourself this question, and from this question you will actually be able to tell what is the author trying to do. Why is he posting this remark? Okay, why is he posting this as an online comment? And if this sounds familiar to you, you should be glad, because in other words, trying to say, look at the purpose of the source. Okay, why? Maybe I don't use the word purpose here. Look at why the author is making the comment. If you can get this, more or less you will be able to explain his stand. Is he a supporter or an opponent? So with that, let's take a look at a sample answer. Okay, so for your sample answers, as I mentioned, there are 3 different ways to answer the supporter-opponent type question. So I'll go through all 3 sample answers here. Realize that they will look a bit different from each other. So the first step is for you to give the author's stand, answer the question directly and give the author's stand. For example, this one, the author is an opponent on the anti-trope movement. Okay, so this is his stand. And this second line here, because it is considerate towards certain segment of the society, this is actually the explanation on how you know the author's stand. So this first example over here is asking you to answer the question based on the message of the source, which usually it is of lower level. Okay, and then over here is fairly similar to your basic inference kind of question. So the giving of evidence, source B says that spare thought for the elderly. So this part over here are your evidence quoted from the source. Okay, and then this suggests that there are people with no other choice but to chope seat, dangerous for them to walk around. So this is your explanation of what the evidence means. Okay, so you realize the structure is quite similar to your basic inference question. The important part is this first line over here and the author's stand itself. So the last part here, however, the anti-trope movement does not take into account this consideration. Alright, this is the same thing, explanation of what the evidence means. Okay, now the second way to answer the supporter opponent type question is to actually detect the author's tone. Okay, meaning does he sound angry about the issue? Does he sound upset? Or is he praising the issue? Certain things like that. All these are related to your tone. So The author is an opponent of the anti-choke movement as he was critical of the movement. Critical meaning he's trying to criticize. So you see over here the structure is the same. We give the stand, and this one is your explanation on how you know the author's stand. So in this case, you know that he is an opponent because he's criticizing the movement itself. He is criticizing the movement. Okay, saying bad things about it. So same thing. Source B says spare a thought for the elderly. So the second part here will look fairly similar to your basic inference question. You have to give the evidence. How you know he's criticizing, this is your evidence. And then explanation of the evidence. So all this is your explanation of the evidence. Okay, then this last line over here, because I know that he's criticizing the choke movement, I know that the author does not agree with the movement. Okay, he's saying bad things about it, he's criticizing it. So for detecting the tone of the source, at Sec 3 we advise you not to do so because sometimes it may be a bit difficult to pick it up. However, as you get more familiar with source-based question, then you can try to attempt it. And the last way you can answer this question is to answer based on the purpose of the source. In other words, the author's intention, or why does he want to publish this source. Okay, this answering based on the purpose is usually the highest level with the most marks. The highest level with the most marks. Okay, so same thing. The author is an opponent of the choke movement. Answer the question directly, give his stand. Then this is the explanation as he was criticizing the movement for being inconsiderate. So explanation on how you know the author's stand. In this case, i.e., he is criticizing the movement. And then in the middle part over here, same as your basic inference, you make an inference, so give the evidence. Okay, and then you explain the evidence. Explanation of the evidence. So the difference between here talking about the tone and the last one talking about the author's intention is actually this last line over here, in which you say that the reason why the author want to publish the source. So he published the source because he want to criticize the movement for not thinking of certain segment of the society. So this line here actually gives you his intention. So over here I'll write it in red to make it clear. Giving the author's intention. And now that we know he wants to criticize the movement, we know that he is an opponent. In other words, he is against the anti-choke movement. Okay, so what we recommend you to do is that for supporter opponent type of question, always try to give the purpose if you can detect it. Remember, the idea is if you can detect the purpose. If you are not able to identify what is the purpose, what's the author's intention, then you may talk about the message of the source. Importantly is that you need to answer the author's stand, make it very clear, and also you need to explain how you know his stand. So in the third case, you know his stand because he's criticizing the movement. In the second case, you know his stand because he has a very critical tone. He is saying bad things about the movement. And in the first case, it is the message of the source. The message of the source is that the movement is not accounting for everyone's needs, and hence you find that he is an opponent of the anti-choke movement. So that is all. I hope you are able to answer this kind of question from now. Thank you.